In May 1998, a building manager in San Francisco's Diamond Heights neighborhood uncovered a horrifying scene. Despite numerous leads and interviews, the case went cold. Lisa Christine Valdez was born on September 6, 1961 in San Francisco, California. As an adult, Lisa pursued a career as a computer programmer. Outside of work, Lisa loved spending time with family. One evening, she decided to host a small dinner party at her Diamond Heights condo. The gathering was intimate, just Lisa, her mother, and her mother's boyfriend enjoying each other's company over a quiet meal. For Lisa, it was another opportunity to celebrate the closeness she held dear. A simple night meant for good food and warm conversation. But as the evening went on, an unseen danger was waiting on the horizon. On May 20, 1998, the building manager of Lisa's condo made a horrifying discovery. After investigating a foul smell coming from her unit, he noticed that the door was slightly open and decided to check inside. What he found would shock the entire community. Inside the home, the authorities soon confirmed that Lisa was dead, her body showing signs that she had been lifeless for several days. The scene was brutal and chaotic, suggesting a violent struggle and a frenzied attack. Lisa had been stabbed more than 20 times in her upper body and face. The sheer number of wounds revealed the level of rage behind the assault. She also had defensive injuries on her hands, indicating that she had fought desperately for her life. Because of the advanced state of decomposition, the investigators could not determine whether she had been sexually assaulted. The bedroom was soaked in blood, especially on the mattress and pillows, showing the savagery of the crime. Adding to the disturbing nature of the scene, Lisa's long hair had been cut, leading the investigators to believe the person who did it may have taken it as a trophy. As the investigation began, Lisa's mother provided critical information to the authorities. She told them that she had last seen her daughter on the night of May 16, when Lisa hosted the dinner party for her and her boyfriend. They had spent the evening together, and Lisa appeared happy and relaxed. Her mother left around midnight, unaware that it would be the last time anyone would see Lisa alive. The next day, Lisa missed her regular dance class, something highly unusual for her. 4 days later, her body was discovered. Lisa's mother also told the investigators that her daughter took great pride in her long hair and would have never willingly cut it. This detail supported the police theory that the person who did it was responsible for the disturbing act. A neighbor further helped with the timeline, reporting that around 1:26 a.m. on May 17, they heard a loud noise followed by the sound of someone running down the stairs. Around the same time, Lisa's computer was suddenly turned off, which led the detectives to conclude that she was likely attacked shortly after the dinner party ended. Forensic analysis revealed the presence of male DNA in the blood evidence collected at the scene, along with latent fingerprints on the bathroom toilet seat. The investigators also interviewed Lisa's housekeeper, who said that she had visited the condo on May 18th, 2 days after the dinner party. The housekeeper recalled seeing Lisa's body on the floor and hearing a male voice inside the home. Believing that she had interrupted something, she quickly left without realizing how serious what she had witnessed was. The detectives looked into several persons of interest, testing their DNA against the evidence collected from the crime scene. Each one was eventually ruled out, leaving the investigators without a match. The male DNA and fingerprints failed to match anyone in existing databases. Despite the initial leads and physical evidence, the investigation slowly lost momentum. Without new information or suspects, the once active case eventually went cold. In 2011, more than a decade after Lisa's death, the investigators received an unexpected hit through CODIS. The DNA profile recovered from the bloody crime scene matched that of a man named Anthony Quinn Hughes, who was about 52 years old at the time. The match came after Hughes was arrested in San Francisco for a shoplifting charge, during which his DNA and fingerprints were collected and entered into the system. What began as a minor offense suddenly reopened one of the city's most haunting cold cases. The investigators confirmed the match through multiple lines of evidence. Along with the DNA link, a fingerprint lifted from the toilet seat inside Lisa's condo matched Hughes's middle finger. This physical evidence placed him directly at the scene of the crime, even though his name had never appeared in the original investigation. The sudden emergence of a suspect after so many years stunned both the detectives and those who had long followed the unsolved case. When Hughes was brought in for questioning, he initially denied knowing Lisa at all. However, as the interrogation continued, he eventually admitted that he had known her during their teenage years. He claimed that they had dated briefly in high school and said that he had run into her once in the 1980s, but insisted he had not seen her since. Despite his denials, the investigators found his explanations inconsistent with the mounting physical evidence linking him to Lisa's case. One critical detail stood out to the detectives. There were no signs of forced entry into Lisa's condo. This suggested that she had willingly allowed the person who hurt her inside, indicating that the person responsible was someone she knew and trusted. When the investigators presented Hughes with the forensic findings, his behavior changed dramatically. In a shocking moment during questioning, he asked for a pen and then stabbed himself in the chest and neck before the officers managed to stop him and save him. His violent reaction further raised suspicions about his guilt. Evidence at the crime scene also suggested that Hughes may have remained in Lisa's home for more than a day after killing her before leaving. The state of the apartment and certain forensic indicators supported this unsettling theory. Eventually, in December 2015, the case went to trial where Hughes was convicted of first-degree murder. However, the charge of attempted sexual assault ended in a mistrial due to insufficient evidence. Following his conviction, Hughes filed a motion asking for a new trial. The judge ultimately reduced the conviction from first-degree to second-degree murder, citing procedural factors and the complexities surrounding the intent behind the crime. In 2016, Anthony Hughes was sentenced to 16 years to life in prison. Records later confirmed that he was incarcerated at the California healthcare facility in Stockton, San Joaquin County. In November 2012, a shocking discovery made halfway across the world in Denmark would expose one of Georgia's most disturbing child exploitation cases. Launched in November 2012, Operation Sunflower, a big initiative, was designed to locate and rescue victims of child abuse while going after those involved in the creation, possession, and distribution of explicit child images. It was a massive effort, bringing together law enforcement agencies across the country under one coordinated front to root out those exploiting children in the darkest corners of the internet. Operation Sunflower was itself an extension of an even larger ongoing effort, Operation Predator, a Homeland Security investigations initiative created to protect children from predators. This nationwide campaign tried to track down offenders who not only looked at or shared illegal material, but also those who traveled internationally to commit acts with minors, participated in child trafficking, or reoffended after prior convictions. Through these connected operations, federal agents worked tirelessly to expose individuals using advanced digital forensics and shared intelligence to take down online networks of abuse. In November 2012, the Danish authorities stumbled upon a chilling discovery during an unrelated explicit child images investigation. While examining a computer they had taken, they found a series of disturbing images showing the abuse of 2 children by an unidentified man. The images were immediately sent to the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Cybercrime Center, which serves as a global hub for tracking and identifying people who do online child exploitation. Analysts at the center carefully examined the files and figured out that the images had been made in Georgia, leading them to alert Homeland Security Investigations agents in Savannah. The Savannah office quickly took action. Using digital forensics, location data, and cross-referenced intelligence, special agents were able to identify the man in the photos as Stephen Keating, a 52-year-old resident of Jessup, Georgia. Within 24 hours of that identification, HSI, along with federal, state, and local law enforcement partners, carried out a search warrant on Keating's home. What they found confirmed their worst fears, a huge collection of explicit material and evidence that tied Keating directly to the crimes. He was taken into custody that same day, ending years of abuse and marking a big victory for international law enforcement collaboration. During Keating's court hearings, the evidence presented painted a horrifying picture. Between 2009 and 2011, Keating repeatedly molested 3 children, all under the age of 12, recording and photographing the assaults to create explicit child images. These images were later shared online, continuing the victim's trauma. The investigation didn't stop there. Following his guilty plea, the authorities discovered that Keating had also sexually abused at least 12 additional minors, whose assaults were not recorded. The magnitude of his crimes shocked even veteran investigators, revealing a predator who had operated unchecked for years under a facade of normalcy in a quiet Georgia town. Brock D. Nicholson, special agent in charge of HSI Atlanta, condemned Keating's actions, calling the case a powerful example of the evolution of global cooperation in child exploitation investigations. Nicholson said the hideous abuse Stephen Keating inflicted on more than a dozen children can never be erased, but hopefully his victims can find some comfort in the fact that he will never again be a free man. He credited the quick coordination between Danish police and U.S. law enforcement for making sure that Keating was identified, arrested, and his victims rescued in less than a day after the initial images were discovered. U.S. Attorney Edward J. Tarver echoed Nicholson's sentiments, emphasizing how serious Keating's crimes were and the justice system's unwavering resolve to protect children. Tarver stated this defendant's lengthy sentence represents the lifetime of pain and anguish he has brought upon his victims. Depraved acts such as these will bring together every facet of law enforcement to ensure the severest punishment allowed by law. In July 2013, Keating pleaded guilty to multiple counts of child exploitation and one count of distributing explicit child images. Each exploitation charge carried a mandatory minimum of 15 years and a maximum of 30 years in prison, while the distribution charge carried a minimum of 5 years and a potential maximum of 20. In addition to his 110-year prison term, Keating was ordered to serve at least 5 years of supervised release and to register as an offender upon completion of his sentence. In 1972, a 21-year-old man set out on a journey from New York to California but failed to return home. The case would only be solved decades later after effort made by a concerned family member. Robert Hutton was born in 1951. At the age of 21, he had taken on work in the construction industry. In 1972, when Robert failed to return home, worry quickly turned into fear. His mother waited, hoping for word or a sign of where he was, but as the days passed with no contact, she knew something was wrong. She went to the police authorities and filed a missing person report, desperate for help in finding her son. The investigation began immediately with the officers gathering what little information they could about his recent movements. Robert's mother told the police that he had been traveling from New York to California at the time of his disappearance. He often relied on hitchhiking or traveling by bus to get from place to place, a common practice for young men of that era wanting to see more of the country. It was not unusual for him to be on the road, but this time was different. He had vanished without a trace. What she told them gave the investigators their first direction, but it also raised serious concern given the dangers of cross-country travel. Unfortunately, despite the detectives' best efforts, the case went cold. In 2011, almost 4 decades after Robert's case was opened, a new effort began under the direction of the Cook County Sheriff's Office to identify the unnamed victims of John Wayne Gacy. Gacy's crimes had shocked the nation. He was convicted of 33 murders in 1980 and later executed in 1994. Each of his victims had been a young man, many of them traveling alone, trusting and unaware of the fate that was waiting for them. The timeline of Gacy's crimes stretched from 1972 to 1978, years marked by the disappearance of many young men. Most of their bodies had been discovered buried in the crawl space beneath Gacy's home in Norwood Park, Illinois. The gruesome discovery had left the authorities with the difficult task of identifying all the victims, some of whom were never matched to a name or family. It was a painstaking process that continued long after Gacy's conviction. Decades had passed since Gacy's arrest and execution, but advances in DNA technology and renewed public interest gave investigators new tools to work with. They invited families of missing persons from the 1970s to come forward, submit DNA samples, and share any information that might help match the unidentified remains to a name. It was a wide-reaching effort to finally bring closure to families who had been waiting for answers. Among the families who responded was Robert Hutton's family. His sister submitted his name to authorities as a possible Gacy victim, believing it was finally time to find out what had happened to her brother after all those years. The investigators noted that Robert fit the general profile of many of Gacy's victims. He was young on the road and often hitchhiked or took the bus, patterns that matched those of others who had fallen prey to Gacy. The fact that Robert was traveling across the country, likely passing through Chicago during that period, raised unsettling possibilities. The more the authorities looked into it, the more it seemed plausible that Robert's disappearance might be connected. The investigators began following the lead using updated records and resources unavailable in the 1970s. Their search led them to a man named Robert Hutton living in Colorado, who shared the same basic identifying information as the missing. From there, the trail went further west, eventually reaching rural Montana. It was there that the authorities located the man who had once been thought to be dead, alive and living quietly under the same name. In April, the investigators confirmed that this man was indeed the same Robert Hutton who had disappeared in 1972. When questioned, Robert told the police that he had simply gotten caught up in the lifestyle of the 1970s. He explained that as the years went by, embarrassment over having lost contact with his family made it easier to continue avoiding them. What had begun as youthful freedom slowly turned into decades of silence. Robert also shared that he had made attempts to reconnect in the 1980s and 1990s, but had difficulty finding his relatives after so much time apart. Ironically, he never knew that the owner of a nearby bar just a few miles from where he lived was his stepmother's brother. The years had separated him from his past so completely that even familiar faces and connections were hidden in plain sight. After being found, Robert reunited with his father and sister, closing a chapter that had remained open for nearly 40 years. The confirmation that he was alive brought both shock and relief to his family, who had long feared the worst. With Robert's reappearance, the missing person case that had once linked him to one of America's most infamous serial killers was officially closed. In May 1974, the calm atmosphere of a small Florida neighborhood was shattered by the sound of gunfire. Despite witness statements, the case went cold for decades. Freddie Farah was born in 1940. At the age of 34, he had already established a stable and meaningful life for himself. He was married to Naja Farah, the woman who shared in his dreams and stood beside him through the ups and downs of life. Together, they built a loving home and were blessed with 4 children, each of whom he adored deeply. His family meant everything to him, and those who knew him described him as a caring and dependable husband and father. Freddie was also a hardworking man dedicated to providing for his loved ones. He owned and managed the Grand Park Food Store, a small but popular convenience store located at 2361 Kings Road in Jacksonville, Florida. Everything in Freddie's life seemed to be moving forward peacefully. His business was steady. His family life was filled with love, and his future appeared bright. But beneath that calm surface, fate had something unimaginable in store. Freddie had no idea that a terrible danger was slowly approaching. On May 22, 1974, tragedy struck the life of Freddie. That day began like any other, with Freddie taking care of his customers and managing his daily business operations. However, the calm routine was suddenly shattered when an unknown suspect entered the convenience store and demanded money from him. What started as a robbery quickly turned into a violent encounter that would end in heartbreak. As the confrontation unfolded, Freddie moved away from the cash register, trying to comply or perhaps calm down the tension. The assailant then moved in front of the counter, closing the distance between them. Without hesitation, the suspect pulled out a firearm and opened fire, striking Freddie. The police were quickly sent to the scene following reports of the shooting. Emergency responders arrived promptly and found Freddie badly injured. Despite their immediate efforts, Freddie's condition was critical. He was rushed to the hospital in hopes that his life could be saved, but sadly, his injuries proved too severe. Freddie was pronounced dead, leaving behind his wife, children, and a devastated community mourning the sudden loss of a man known for his kindness and dedication. In the aftermath of the tragedy, law enforcement began an intensive investigation to identify the person responsible for the senseless act. The officers collected evidence from the store and began interviewing potential witnesses. One witness who had been inside the store during the incident reported hearing the suspect shout, "Give it to me," or "This is a holdup," moments before the shooting took place. The same witness described seeing a black male running away from the store immediately after the gunfire, running out the door and disappearing from sight. Strangely, despite the apparent robbery attempt, the suspect did not take any money from the cash register or anywhere else in the store. This unusual detail puzzled the investigators and suggested that something may have gone wrong during the attempted robbery, or that the crime might not have been motivated purely by theft. The investigators had very little to work with beyond a few fingerprints collected from the crime scene and the witness statements recorded at the time. As years turned into decades, the file on Freddie's case grew cold, leaving his family and the Jacksonville community without closure. In 2016, more than 4 decades after Freddie's life was tragically taken, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit decided to look at the case again, using advanced forensic technology unavailable at the time of the original investigation. The detectives turned their attention to the evidence that had been kept from 1974, including several fingerprints collected from the scene of the crime. With the help of the modern automated fingerprint identification system and newly expanded databases containing millions of digitized prints, the investigators hoped that technology might finally reveal what years of searching could not. Their efforts soon paid off. In 2017, the Cold Case Unit received a long-awaited breakthrough. One of the fingerprints from the original evidence matched those of Johnny Lewis Miller, who was by then a 60-year-old street performer living in New Orleans, Louisiana. Miller's fingerprints were already stored in the system because of prior unrelated arrests, and it was this digital trail that finally linked him to this case. In May 2017, Miller was arrested in New Orleans under an out-of-state warrant for second-degree murder and attempted armed robbery. The arrest marked a major milestone for both the investigators who had kept the case alive and for the Farah family, who had waited more than 40 years for justice. During police interviews, Miller reportedly admitted to being involved in the fatal robbery attempt. Though he did not give full details about the incident, his partial confession later became part of a plea negotiation. In April 2018, Miller agreed to plead guilty to a lesser manslaughter charge rather than face a full trial for murder. As part of the plea agreement, his sentence was set to time served, which was the 344 days he had already spent in jail since his arrest. This legal resolution, while controversial to some, finally brought an official close to the decades-old case. A unique aspect of the plea deal required Miller to meet directly with members of the Farah family. During this meeting, he was expected to explain his actions and express remorse for the pain caused by his crime, an act intended to promote a form of restorative justice. For the Farah family, it was a bittersweet moment. Though no punishment could ever undo their loss, they were at least able to hear the truth from the man responsible for taking Freddie's life. Following the resolution of the case, law enforcement officials released a statement acknowledging the perseverance and dedication of the Cold Case Unit. They stated, "We are happy to have been able to support the Farah family and will continue to do so through the court process. We also want to extend our sincere appreciation to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and their cold case team. 43 years is a long time, and we are so thankful that they took the time to review and reprocess this case. They remind us why against all odds, against all logic, we still hope." Freddie's only son said, "People may ridicule me for saying this, but I almost feel sorry for him. He came from nothing and he is going back to nothing. It does me no good to have him sit in jail. Now I have my questions answered. I was a 6-year-old kid and I needed answers, so now I'm at peace." As Miller left the court, he mouthed the words, "Thank you," to the family. Bobby responded with a thumbs up.